We have begun our investigation of simple machines. You got to think back because it was before I learned yesterday. It was all the way back on Monday. We took a look at a Science Max Simple Machines video, and you built some background knowledge about what simple machines are and how they make work easier. Today, we're going to focus on two simple machines specifically. We are going to focus on the inclined plane and the wedge, okay? The inclined plane and the wedge. The way that we're going to do this is through reading and looking at some photographs of examples of inclined planes and wedges, okay? If you would please on Seesaw, click on that activities light bulb to refresh your feed. And that will open up your simple machines, inclined planes, and wedges. It says, with your teacher, read the paragraphs from our anchor text about inclined planes and wedges. Discuss the purpose of these simple machines in our lives. You are also going to identify real-life examples by identifying objects around you or by using Google Images, okay? Go ahead and click on that add response so that you can see our anchor text. Our anchor text is the article that we read together on Monday, but we're going to focus on two specific parts today, okay? Main goal, identify types of simple machines and their uses. Investigate and build simple machines to understand how they are used. Before we release you to build these simple machines, we've got to understand them and how and why they work. You are going to do this goal by asking and answering questions about a nonfiction text. On slide 2, you will see a link that will take you to our anchor text, and I'm going to go ahead and unlock that now. There we go. If you would please click on that link, it will open up our anchor article. The reason it is linked is so it is in one place for you and you don't have to scroll through a bunch of different slides and make your slides longer. Today we are going to focus specifically on the inclined plane and the wedge, so the first two sections. Go ahead and take a look at that article now. I'm going to post it or send out the link to you as well so that it opens automatically for you if you are struggling to get to it. There you go. Levin, a question. Oh, no, your hand's down. Okay. All righty. I'm going to go ahead and click on the zoom in here so that I can see the inclined plane a little bit better. Again, remember, this will sound familiar to you. We read this on Monday, but today we're not going to read the whole thing. We're just going to focus on inclined planes and wedges. First thing I notice is that there is a photograph of a man pushing a person up an inclined plane, also known as a ramp, in a wheelchair. This is one example of inclined planes that we see every day in our lives. Read with me, please. Amp up your ramp, inclined plane. Imagine trying to carry a heavy box up a ladder. It would probably be difficult and perhaps even dangerous. But if you were to place a long sheet of plywood on the ladder and push the box up, it would take less effort and energy. You can see people using inclined planes or ramps all the time in their daily lives. Have you ever seen a delivery truck with a long ramp? The ramp helps people load or unload products more easily. Have you ever seen a building with a ramp that leads to a door? This is an inclined plane for people using wheelchairs. A ladder leaning on a wall is an inclined plane. Stairs are sloped to make an inclined plane. The bottom of your bathtub is also an inclined plane because it's sloped to force water toward the drain. So there are some real-life examples of inclined planes. I'm going to ask you on Seesaw to hop to slide 3. On slide 3, there is a link over here for inclined planes. It says, click the link to discover real-life examples of inclined planes and wedges. Complete the sentence in each section after you do your research. I'm going to pop you into a breakout room, and I want you to click on this link for inclined planes. When you click on it, it will open up a Google Images search of all the inclined planes that you can see in our everyday lives. Okay? So I want you to talk about that Google image search with your partner and then complete the sentence on slide 3. Okay, hopefully you were able to, with your partner, take a look at all of the different inclined planes. A roller coaster was one I had not thought of. I know Aiden G probably loved this one at the skate park. We also had a trail or a road going up or down a large hill or mountain, another version of an inclined plane. Whatever you and your partners chose to focus on, please make sure that you finished this sentence. One real-life example of an inclined plane is, put a text box there or write there what inclined plane you saw. All right, let's also continue on with our reading. So we're going to go back to that article. We're going to take a look now at a wedge. So we are switching simple machines. If you lost that article, remember it's linked on slide 2. Just click on it and it will open up for you. Please listen as I read about the wedge. Get the wedge edge. What has at least one slanting side and ends in a sharp edge? A wedge. A wedge is similar to a ramp, but instead of moving an object from here to there, it pushes it apart. The narrower the wedge is, the easier it is to divide something. Wedges can be sharp like axes, knives, or shovels. They can also be round like the tip of a nail or the tines of a fork. Just imagine how difficult it would be to eat dinner without the help of knives and forks to cut up and pick up your food. Okay, so there are some real-life examples of wedges. We also learned that a wedge's job is to push an object apart. Okay, so an axe that chops wood pushes both sides of that wood apart. Okay, a steak that is, or a knife that is cutting a steak pushes the bite you're going to take away from the rest of the steak. So it's going to split items apart. Same thing here. You have on slide 3 a link to a Google Images search. This Google Images is going to show you all of the, it should say wedges. Look at that, it says edge. Oops. All of the wedges that we can find in the everyday world. I want you to scroll through these Google Images with your partner and discover, excuse me, different examples of wedges that are in your everyday life. You will also complete that sentence. One real life example of a wedge is, tell us your real life example. Oops. Okay, with your partner, you should have completed this sentence. One real life example of a wedge is, now that you've seen that Google Images search, okay? All right, friends, we are making good time, and that's good news because I'm going to give you guys some partner time instead of some independent work time, so it'll lessen your independent workload a little bit, okay? Now that we have read about and taken a picture walk of simple machines, we are going to watch some of these simple machines in action. This does say independently, but we've got some time, so let's change it to partner work. Together, we're going to watch this video, and as we're watching, I want you to record one thing that you learned about wedges. Okay, we're going to focus on wedges first. So we're going to take a look at this together, and then I want you to record what is one thing that you learned about wedges from this video. Okay, here we go.
Let's try a bigger hammer. That bigger hammer is not working either. Hi, I'm Jared. Welcome to Fun Science Demos. My job today is to split this piece of wood into two separate pieces. It's a lot of work, but through science we've discovered there are machines to make that work easier. In other videos we highlighted some of those simple machines that make our work easier. Today we're going to talk about a very specific type of simple machine, the wedge. This wedge is a simple machine and its job is to make it easier to push things apart or to separate things. So I want to try and use a wedge to split this piece of wood into two pieces. Here's another type of wedge. Which side of this wedge do you think I'm going to use to split this in half? This side or this side? Let's take a look and see which one works better. That side didn't seem to work too well. I wonder what will happen when I use this side of my wedge. Take a look. I would say it did a really good job at making my work of splitting this piece of wood in half a whole lot easier. So our wedge had no problem in separating this piece of wood. Check this out. Can my wedge actually split and separate this piece of wood? It almost seems impossible, but science can do amazing things. Let's see this wedge at work. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the wedge at work. But what we want to do now is take a closer look at really how is this wedge working. To do that, we're going to go to the table with some other neat demonstrations. Now, to take a closer look at how a wedge actually works, we need to do some measuring. To do that, we have one block that is a wedge and another block that is not a wedge. And I want to see how much force it takes to move both of these blocks through some dry rice. All I have here is actually 3 big bags of dry rice, and we're going to try and move these blocks through that dry rice to see how much force it takes. How do we know how much force it takes? We're going to use our good old trusty spring scale. So we have our block in our bin of rice, and I want you to watch what happens to the rice when I push my block through the rice. As I push it through the rice, you can see the rice doesn't do a good job of separating. It all kind of bunches up in the front. Now, let's see what kind of force that takes as we push the block through the rice. I'll bring in my spring scale, put it onto my block, and I'll begin to pull. And as I pull, you can see I'm pulling about 600 grams with this flat block. So we've seen what our flat block can do. Let's see what our wedge does as it travels through the rice. So let's start to pull this wedge through the rice. Take a close look at the spring scale as I pull. I start to pull, and it's pulling about 300 grams. I'm going to stop right there so you can see. We'll zoom in. It's just at 300 grams. You can see it moves as soon as I tug. So this flat block took about 600 grams of force to move it through the rice, but this wedge took about half that, only 300 grams of force to move this wedge through the rice. I would say that looking at our data, the wedge really does make our job easier of separating things and moving things apart. Wedges are at work all around us. Take a look at this. These two pieces of metal are actually almost about the same size, but there's one difference. Look at the end. The end of this nail is a wedge. This has a flat front. There's no wedge to it. Let's see what happens when I try to hammer both of these into this block of wood. I'm thinking that this wedge might make my work a whole lot easier. What do you think? Let's take a look and see what happens. First, the flat one. You can see it did make a little indentation in the wood, but now let's compare it to the nail. you can see my wedge did a whole lot better job in separating that wood so that nail could be pushed down a whole lot further than the flat part. Wedges are at work everywhere around us. Wedges are even at work in our kitchens. Believe it or not, each of these items is an example of a wedge, and these wedges make our life a whole lot easier. They make work a whole lot easier. Whether it's a knife that's used to separate pieces of food, the fork is actually a wedge. Take a closer look at the tip. It separates the food so I can get in and grab it. The spatula is used to separate things off of a pan. A cheese grater or a grater is used to separate pieces off of the carrot. A peeler, that's actually a wedge, and it separates a nice thin slice of something from something else. Science is so cool. Wedges at work, they're everywhere. Wedges don't only just make work easier, sometimes wedges make work a whole lot of fun. Science is so cool. Sometimes it's tasty, and many times it makes our work easier. If you want to learn more about simple machines, check out our links in the video description. Thanks for watching.
All right, so now we have taken a look at wedges. I want you to go back into your breakout room, and I want you to talk with your partner about one thing you learned. What is one thing that you learned about wedges from this video, okay? Not from our reading, not from your Google search, but specifically from this video. What is one thing you learned? See ya. The wedges, one thing I learned was, okay? Now I want you to take a look at slides 5, 6, 7, and 8. These are the texts that you are going to read in order to answer the questions on slide 9. Slide 9 has 2 questions, and both questions are about wedges, okay? What is the main purpose of a wedge, and how do your teeth work like wedges? What is the main purpose of a wedge, and how do your teeth work like wedges? It does say to use evidence from the text to answer these questions in complete sentences. That means I am going to see your sentences typed. They're going to have capital letters. They're going to have punctuation. They're going to have subjects. They're going to have verbs. It's going to be a complete idea, okay? So that is what you are getting ready to read and look for with your partners. Read through these texts on slides 5 through 8 and find the main purpose of a wedge and how your teeth work like wedges. Now, you probably won't finish, and that's okay because this was supposed to be independent work anyway. But do know that the more you get done with your partner right now, the less independent work you have. So when you get in your breakout rooms, discuss who is going to read some of the sections and who's going to be in charge of highlighting evidence for the sections, and then who is going to talk about the answers. That's both of you. You'll both talk about the answers. Okay, any questions about your expectation before I send you to work?
Do we have to stay here?
I don't know what you mean by stay here. You're going to a breakout room.
No, I'm talking about like if we want to do it independently.
Nope, my expectation of directions is with your partner. Other questions?
Miss Sousa, am I able to share my screen? Do you know?
You should be able to, yes.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
thanks.
You bet. All righty, here we go, guys. Okay, let's talk about your independent work expectations. So you were able to get a little bit of a jump start on some of your work by taking a look at the independent wedge work. You were to read and or listen to, because these were recorded for you, the text about wedges, okay? You were to use that information to answer the questions on slide 9 in complete sentences. This will be counting for a science grade and for a reading grade, so make sure this is your best work. The rest of your independent work is to repeat this process of watching the video, and reading about the inclined plane and answering questions. But it's about an inclined plane. So first together you did wedges. Now you're going to watch and learn about inclined planes. On slide 16, as always, there is success criteria. You will create a video explaining what you know about inclined planes and wedges. And your video will go right here. Okay, so you're going to add a video of your knowledge. All right, friends, that is your task for today.